Hi, good morning. I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org and Quasi Yoga with Pam Fox here on Facebook. So soy, depending on the sources that you look at and who you listen to, you might have the belief that soy is really, really bad for you. It should be avoided at all costs. Or you might have the belief that there are some, health benefits to soy. Hey, good morning, Div. We're talking about soy this morning. So there's good news and there's bad news when it comes to soy. What I'm going to be talking about today is going to be dividing soy up into really two different components. One, you have your traditional soy foods. Okay, so this is your edamame, your tofu, and your fermented soy foods like tempeh, miso, and natto. And so Div brought up a really good point yesterday about how people have, lived in Asian cultures and eaten these traditional soy foods for thousands of years, and they're among the healthiest people on the planet. And that's true. But they're eating traditional soy foods. Okay, so that's the one category. And then the other category is what's known as isolated soy proteins. And all an isolated soy protein is exactly what it sounds like. It's where they take the soybean and they extract the protein. They isolate the protein, they leave, the fiber, the vitamins, the mineral, everything else behind. They just extract the protein. Does this sound familiar? So here in this country, we have modified and messed with our foods in that way on a lot of different levels, haven't we? One, processed white flour. They start with the wheat, they extract the bran and the germ, and you're left with the endosperm. And they put it through a bleaching process, and you have your processed wheat flour, which we know isn't good for us. Same thing with processed sugar. They start with something beautiful like a sugar cane. They extract the sugar, the carbohydrate, they leave everything else behind. Okay, same thing with processed oils. They extract just the oil from the olive, for example, or the corn or the canola or whatever it is. They extract just the oil. And then we talked about how that has an inflammatory response within the body, the injuring of the endothelial cells within the arterial walls. And then here with soy, they extract the protein from the soy. They make a soy protein powder, and it's put in tons of processed foods. So just like processed flour, processed oil, and processed sugar are put in, where are they primarily? They're in our junk foods. Same thing with isolated soy protein. It's in our highly processed foods. So things like, a real big one is your protein powders, your protein bars, your vegan replacement meats like your burgers and your chicken patties and your vegan cheeses. Things like sauces and soups and dressings, these highly processed foods. Hi, Rich. Oh, now I'm distracted. These highly processed foods that go into our junk foods, these are the foods that we know aren't good for us. I'm going to grab my notes. So when it comes to isolated soy protein, that's one of the soy foods that you definitely want to avoid. That's one that we know is not good for us. So I'm going to jump back over to the other category, so your traditional soy foods. And so if you go and you Google right now, is soy dangerous? Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? There's going to be a lot of controversy, like Div mentioned yesterday. There's going to be a lot of controversy. You're going to have, experts on one side saying you should avoid it. You're going to have other experts saying it's beneficial. And so where does the truth lie? And I would really encourage you to do your own research when it comes to soy. If you're interested in eating soy, a lot of people aren't even interested in it. But again, it's in a lot of the foods you're already eating in a not so healthy form. And so really need to do your research. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give my sources where I get my information from. So going back to the traditional soy foods, again, that people in Asian cultures have eaten for thousands of years, and they're very healthy people. And incidentally, I'm going to make a note for myself because I'm going to get sidetracked if I don't. The Okinawans is an example of this. The Okinawans are among the 3 healthiest populations on the planet, and they eat a highly plant-based diet. High in plants, rice, and soy. There was, you've probably heard of the China study where they went to China and they studied populations in China. which was a great pool of people to study because among the different populations, you have people in the countryside, you have people in urban areas, and they all eat very differently. And so the result of this study was, it found that people who ate primarily plant-based, they ate a lot of soy, they were, much healthier and had much less disease. And then another area of interest is what's known as the blue zones. Have you guys heard of the blue zones? So the blue zones began with a team of people through the National Geographic that went on a mission to find populations where people were living into their 90s independently without disease. And I think they came up with 5 or 6 different what they call blue zones. And there's a website, you can check that out. There's also, I think they're making a documentary called The Blue Zones. I don't think it's been released yet. But anyway, what they found, the Okinawans, again, were in those blue zones, but there's actually a place right here in this country known as Loma Linda, California. And if you don't know who lives in Loma Linda, California, it's actually a group of people known as the Seventh-day Adventists, and they're a denomination of Christians who they're old school. So when they look for what's ideal or what's optimal, they go back to the Old Testament. They go back to Genesis, where God created the humans and the plants and the animals, and He said, "Eat the plants." And so they eat the plants. They also, in the Bible it says that drunkenness is a sin, so many of them abstain from alcohol altogether. They believe in fellowship, where we support and love one another, and they also believe that there's healing, effects of being out in nature. So these are just some of their lifestyle habits. And yes, one interesting thing about people in Loma Linda is they like to use those people in research studies, because within the Seventh-day Adventists, you have people who, adhere strictly to a plant-based diet. You have people kind of somewhere in the middle, and then you have people who, they just say, forget it, I'm just going to eat whatever. And so one really interesting study is where they take actual cells, cancer cells, put them in a petri dish, and then they take the blood from these different groups of people, and they put it on the blood. And the people who eat mostly primarily plant-based not only kills cancer cells the most, but it kills cancer cells and it stops their growth. So that's really something really interesting to look at as well. So, but getting back to soy and traditional soy foods. So one of the things you'll hear a lot when you go to research this is you'll hear terms like estrogen, phytoestrogen, and isoflavones. And all that really is typically in, so dairy, for example, there's estrogen there. It's a hormone. And then in soy, there's also estrogen, but it's known as phytoestrogen, which is a plant estrogen. Also known as isoflavones. And really all I want to say about those is that they react differently within the body. And so if you're really diligent and you do your homework and you look at the studies and the information carefully, you'll see that people who eat these traditional soy foods with phytoestrogens in them actually have a decreased risk of cancer. Cancers like, breast cancer, the #1 cancer among women in our country. Cancers like prostate cancer, the #1 cancer among men in our country. A decrease of endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, decreased risk of bone fractures, which is, very common among people with osteoporosis. So it actually boosts bone density, decreased risk of, cholesterol, heart disease. So the strongest evidence really does point to a benefit at best from a diet consuming traditional soy foods, neutral at worst. Again, it just depends on the studies that you look at. And there are a lot of studies, and I know you guys aren't going to go out and read all of these studies. I just want to take, so at the end of this video, I am going to share my resources for you, and it's a really great place to start because it's a place that summarizes the studies. It's a website that summarizes the studies. So I want to talk about two more things. One is soy allergies. About 1 in 2,000 people have a soy allergy. It's actually on the list of most common food allergies. It is at the bottom, but you can get tested for soy allergies. Soy allergies, 1 in 2,000, which is 40 times less than the most common food allergen, which is actually dairy, milk. And then I wanted to talk about really quickly, I just made some notes somewhere here about which brands of tofu and soy milk I drink. So soy milk, there are a lot of different soy milk products. and you really need to look at the ingredients. And I didn't talk about this yet, so really quickly, soy is one of our country's genetically modified crops. And so when you're looking to buy, again, your traditional soy foods, it's really important, in my opinion, that you avoid the genetically modified ones. So you look for that organic label. Okay, so my favorite brand of soy milk is called West Soy, and that's because there are only 2 ingredients in it. There's soy and water. A lot of soy milks will put an ingredient in it known as carrageenan, which I try to avoid, and a lot of non-dairy milks are eliminating this ingredient from the milk, so that's really good. And then as far as tofu goes, again, look for that organic label. I personally don't eat a whole lot of tofu, but I do enjoy it. It's kind of expensive, so, you know, occasionally we'll pick it up, but it's, here where I live, we have a Fred Meyer and we have a Safeway, and at Fred Meyer there's the Organic 365 brand, and at Safeway there's the Nuss Soya brand, and then stores like Whole Foods will carry a variety of organic tofus. One of them is the Wildwood brand, which I actually really like. Okay, so I think I hit everything. I probably forgot some important things. I took a lot of notes. I was really prepared today, you guys. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about insulin-like growth factor, but I'm trying to rush because I've got to get off to work. So I just want to mention my sources for my information. I really like nutritionfacts.org, and that's a website where a doctor, his name is Dr. Michael Greger, his life's work is to read the studies as they pertain to nutrition and disease as they come out, and to report on them. So you and I as lay people, we don't really have access to those studies as they come out because they're published in peer-reviewed medical journals. You have to have subscriptions to those things, so most lay people don't. And so eventually, you know, if it gains interest, it'll be published on the internet and we have access to it. But in the beginning, you have to have subscriptions to these medical journals. And so Dr. Michael Greger, if there's a study coming out this year about, you know, 5,000 people who've been eating, you know, this isolated soy protein for the last 5 years, he's going to read that study the day it comes out, and he'll do a review of it on his channel. And so thanks, Rich, you too. And so this is a really great site to go and not have to read the entire study. But Dr. Michael Greger, he'll talk about who funded the study. He'll talk about the, you know, what the subjects ate in the study. So a lot of good information, and he'll summarize it for you so you can kind of get the conclusion of, you know, what the study was about. So you can check that out, and then also if you're interested or if you have further questions, as always, if you're catching this on the replay or if you're catching it over at my YouTube channel, you can leave questions or comments below. You can also check out my website where you can find out more about me and how I healed on a plant-based diet, and you can find out more about my health coaching services. There are a lot of opportunities there for you to connect with me, and my email is there as well if you want to send me an email. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.